Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of Community Connect. I'm your host Fatma Aslam and thank you for joining us today. Today's guest is a total force. Born and raised in Houston, a lawyer, an entrepreneur, and someone who knows how to build with a purpose. So without further delay, let's dive in. Raza Merchant, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Raza, you've achieved many things in your life, but without law, without any titles, who was Raza Merchant growing up? Take us back to young Raza growing up in Houston.
Oh, wow. That's a very good question. I think I was a free-spirited child, growing up, exploring the world, kind of no different than I think a typical immigrant in Houston or in the United States. Me as a child, I guess, I was very curious. I think I was one of the people who wanted to always find out a lot more about things, and I think that's why I became a lawyer, because I like to find out about things. So I think that's what I was as a child.
So Raza, you've been involved in several entrepreneurial ventures. Tell us about that. When did you start? What were the early ventures that you were a part of?
Sure. So one was actually before law school. I was a partner in cell phone stores. That venture didn't end up the best, and so that's kind of what led me into law school. I've been a part of them and before that in family businesses. So for the past, I think 20 years-ish, I've been semi-entrepreneurial.
I always feel that, entrepreneurial, either people have that seed in them or they don't. So I'm very curious to know where you got, that entrepreneurial drive from. Was it from your family growing up?
I think my family. My father was an entrepreneur. He's also a professional turned entrepreneur. And so that's probably why it was in my blood to kind of do it. I won't lie, I did get away from it for a while. I did work in jobs in between. Don't get me wrong, I haven't been an entrepreneur throughout, but somehow it called me back.
What was those early lessons that you may have learned, from your entrepreneurial growing up, from your entrepreneurial background, from those early ventures that you kind of carried forward with you in your life?
Well, that's tough. I think there's not one single thing that started from the beginning. I think the journey is everything that's happened. It's over time. I mean, there's not one specific thing from then that I maybe hold on to now. I think it's a culmination of things, to be honest, to be here. It's time and learning, not one single lesson, I guess you could say.
Okay. And what, you obviously then went on to law school. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious to know what drew you into law.
Got it.
And, where did you end up going to law school?
Got it. So, what drew me in is while I was in between, when I was kind of getting out of that cell phone store venture, I had a bit of disputes, right? So we were going through the contracts. It happens a lot, disputes with other parties. And I became friends with actually a lawyer who was my elevator buddy. And we'd be in the same elevator in the same building. We'd run into each other. He was at the suite, maybe 3-4 suites down. We started talking. I would ask him questions about contract law and things that I was going through. He'd give me answers. And he was kind of the one who kind of piqued my interest, because I started really looking into contracts and law and how it affected my business. And that's what kind of led me to go to law school. For law school, I graduated from University of Texas at Austin. And
How was your time at law school?
Oh, it was amazing in the sense, I mean, of course, it's grueling. The first year is hazing, as you know.
Right.
It's you have to be on really I think refine your study skills and analytical skills your first year. But overall, it was after the first year was done and you got over that little hump, then you get to take the courses you like, things that interested me, why I went to law school, and so those were very fun for me.
So Raza, you've actually worked in a few different cities, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to know, what was your experience like? Why did you work in the cities that you did? And, what was it like working in different cities, and how how do you carry those experiences with you?
Yeah, no. So Austin, I worked in Austin. I worked in San Francisco. I actually did a stint in Dallas too. And of course Houston now. But, each city has a different area of the law they focus on. Austin is kind of tech. You see that a lot, so this kind of law is kind of around there. And Austin was where I went to school, so that's why I wanted to go there. When you're young, I think it's a very fun young town to be in. But San Francisco, I think has an amazing tech vibe. If you like tech law and you want to work with these big publicly traded companies, and you get to work on very sophisticated legal work. I was part of M&A team over there in San Francisco, and so you get some very sophisticated, cool things that you get to work on. So that's kind of the difference. And how I brought that here, well, a lot of it was potentially inapplicable because when you come in, you're working for larger clients, bigger cases, and when you start your own, it's definitely going to be smaller cases. And so like a lot of the law that you may have studied before, it doesn't really apply to small business. But I think the work ethic and the and the skills that you learn in general are very much applicable to learn quickly to kind of, it's the same section of the law, just a different area, right?
So was it a conscious choice to go work in different cities, or was it just something that happened?
Something just happened. So yeah, it was just something that happened through connections and recruiting. It happened. So, and of course, I did want to explore different areas. San Francisco, especially, it's known for being a really good place to build a career.
So after you worked at a couple of law firms, you decided to launch your own firm.
Yes.
Yes, and I want to know more about that. When did that thought come into your mind? How old were you, and what was the process like?
Oh, wow. So I was somewhere in my 30s, but to be honest, it was more of a decision for personal reasons.
Okay.
Not really. So I think being an entrepreneur is something that, yes, you're born with, but you can easily get sidetracked from, I think. When you are working at a job, it is very comfortable to stay there. You do get used to it. And quite frankly, at one point, I thought I would never be an entrepreneur again. When I was working my jobs, I really didn't think I'd ever go back to it. I was enjoying myself. I was working on very sophisticated things, had a good earning, so I was not thinking about it. Maybe later, but not at that time. But it was a very tough decision, I won't lie. I was like, career, do I go back to family? I ended up choosing my family. So when I came back, I was kind of pushed into entrepreneurship, to be honest. Again, I was like, you know what? And it all worked out.
So the first thing, when you moved back, the first thing you started was your law firm.
Yeah.
And at that time, what was going on in your head? Were you nervous? And I guess what motivated you to take that step and bet on yourself?
Oh, I've done it before.
Yeah.
I've thought about, I've done it before. I knew I could do it.
So tell us about, the early days of setting up the firm. What were the challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome those?
Oh, 100% is you're learning a lot of things new, no matter how much because I had been practicing for, I think, about 5 years at that point. So I think the challenges in the beginning were learning a lot of those, the business of law, right? Because there's actually a business to it. You have to run it in that type of manner as well. So I think there was a lot of challenges in terms of wearing all those hats and getting it up and running and getting clients. I can't, I wish I remembered my first client. I probably should, but I remember getting that first client. It took some time. It took maybe a month.
So Raza, when you did start your law firm, what area of practice did you start with?
Business law, solely business law. So that's what I did all throughout before. And
you've been called an entrepreneur's lawyer.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for your clients?
Oh, well, because I have been an entrepreneur who's not a lawyer, and then I am still an entrepreneur. I have side ventures as well, apart from the law firm. So I kind of think I look at things from a different lens. What's your actual liability? What's your, actually I learned it at one of my, another previous firm I worked for, where there was a client who, it was cheaper for them to pay the penalty than to file something on time, because it's just how large they were.
Right.
So it's just kind of like learning a conscious decision. Do I sometimes comply with something that's arbitrary, but there might be a fine associated with it, but is it cheaper for me? And kind of like, what's the dollars and cents? And so I think I look at things from a different perspective, because, I've been there on that side. Depending on the size of your business, what's your risk profile? Of course, I could give you the most fancy agreement that will protect you. That'll cost you a lot of money, but do you need that? You can do something maybe, we don't need to go with the Rolls Royce. We're okay with the Toyota, that type of stuff.
So does your practice help set up businesses from scratch and walk them through the entire process of growth?
Absolutely. We do a lot more than just the law. We business coach them too. Right? Because, we've been through the whole journey, so there's a lot more than just setting up your company, getting your trademark and things like that done.
Right.
We have a lot of international clients, how to open a bank account, how do I do this? What's practical this? Do you have a CPA? Do you have this? So we kind of help them throughout the whole process on everything they need, because there's compliance outside of just opening a LLC or a corporation.
Right. So Raza, we talked about how you started your own firm. So I want to know, what are common mistakes that you see new business owners make? And, if there's somebody today that's starting their business, what would you advise them?
If someone was starting a business, I think you need to know what you're doing and I think the biggest mistake is actually not planning, not having a business plan. Most people think they can wing it. And while you can, to a certain extent, some people have more skill than others in this. So I've seen people very successful without a business plan, but trust me, having a map of where you want to go is so important. It's like driving a car without putting the destination in your navigation. No one does that. You need to know where to go, right? Unless you've already been there multiple times, then you don't use directions, right? So I think having a business plan of what you're actually trying to do for 5 years is super important. Map it out. Do the math. Don't just do it. Actually put time into it.
Right.
This is your next 5-year plan, and I really think business plan is important. Now, it doesn't have to be the most sophisticated, Harvard Business School style or anything like that. It could be sketches. It could be a notebook. But it needs to have steps and a plan for your next couple of years.
And are there, what role have mentors played in your life?
Oh, I mean, everything, right? Having someone to reach out to when there's difficult questions is super. I mean, entrepreneurship is very lonely. I will put you this way. There's you're obviously not many people are entrepreneurs, even though you hear about it maybe on social media, you see it, but there's only this many of us. There's more people are in jobs or in traditional ways. So having someone to talk to who's a mentor who's been through it is super crucial. I think it becomes difficult at times, because no one can understand you, nor can your spouse. Nobody can understand what you're going through, because you're constantly hunting when you're an entrepreneur, right? Versus instead of focusing just on a task, if you're working somewhere, that's a smaller piece of a big puzzle. So I would say it's super crucial.
Right. Thank you for sharing those insights with us. But I'm actually curious to ask you, I know that you practice in immigration law as well, and currently there's a lot of uncertainty in the climate. So I just want to get a sense from you of what's going on, what kind of issues are your clients facing and what your firm does to help them.
Sure. So I'll take it one step back. We kind of started more immigration law because of the business side. Actually, we did a lot of investor visas and things like that. So it was more on the business side. It kind of grew more into the personal side. Of course, after the recent election and then now the change of administration, there's a different way of enforcement. So as a practitioner, first of all, you have to keep very much up to date, because things that were happening yesterday might not be happening today, and there's a lot of uncharted territory. So we are helping a lot of people who find themselves in such positions where maybe decisions of the current administration have affected them, and of course we try to represent them as best as we can and whatever remedies they may have. But some of it is also people being proactive, that where there's more fear, I would say. So you have a lot of people who are saying, I have a green card, I didn't think about citizenship, let me go ahead and do that. Just because of the enforcement that's happening by the current administration, you're seeing that anyone who's not a citizen, green card holders or below, there's different enforcement. So people are being cautious, and so we are figuring out ways to help them achieve whatever status they're looking for.
Right. And I already know this, but I want the audience to know that how can an immigration attorney really help you strengthen your case?
Oh, absolutely, right? Because there could be even a simple form as a marriage sponsorship form. People think that you can just submit whatever's on the list and you're good enough. Well, no, there has to be, first of all, there could be things in your story that you don't think are important that we know in the law is important, so we need to point it out and then explain it the proper way, right? We've had cases where a spouse got into a medical residency program somewhere else. So immigration won't like it that you're not living together right now, but we have to explain that, right? If you just went ahead and submitted it and just put it there and be like, wait, well, so you need someone to explain the story and how there's still a current marriage going on, or even simple things like documents that you think are good, like joint bank accounts. Just having a joint bank account's not good enough. Are there transactions in there that prove that you're married? you know? And that's for me to look at. Most clients will just put things together and send it, but it doesn't tell the story that needs to be told. And so that's our job.
Definitely. I think an immigration attorney can, completely change your case in a positive sense. So Raza, you've been, you're a local Houstonian, born and raised.
Yes.
I want to know how have you seen the community here evolve over the years? Especially the South Asian community.
Tremendous growth. I mean, in the 90s, there was not many of us. 80s, I don't remember as much, but 90s, not many of us. The community's grown by so much, and especially, I want to say Houston. I spent a good amount of the 2010s outside of Houston. And so when I came back close to 2020, Houston had completely changed just for me, for someone who grew up here. The amount of entrepreneurial growth, how many people in the South Asian community that have become successful. I think there was immense growth from the 2000 to 2020 period, and obviously still continuing, but there was a huge growth in wealth. I think entrepreneurship, and so I think the Pakistani community especially, and South Asian community in general, has done really well for itself in Houston.
So have you seen a lot of young South Asian entrepreneurs in the community?
Yes, I met some and I couldn't believe it, right? That they're in their young 20s and they have this business venture, that business venture. I'm very impressed, highly impressed by them. But a lot of that, I think, is also the world has changed. When I was growing up, I think there was only one path really to make it. Now there's too many paths, and there's a lot of tools out there. And to be honest, our South Asian community is very hungry. You can see that they want to work hard and they want to conquer things, and so you're seeing that.
So what's one thing that, you'd say that the young South Asian community, the entrepreneurs, what is it that they need the most? Is it mentorship? Is it access to resources? What's one thing that you think would really help them in their journey to success?
So other than finding a mentor that we talked about before, I think there are so many resources out there from a lot of different places. One is a nonprofit I'm involved in, which is the South Asian Chamber of Commerce. We provide these type of resources to students all the way to young professionals, even seasoned professionals all across the board. And there's workshops you can attend to learn a little bit about law. There's workshops on mental health. There's all throughout we have a workshop on state of the economy, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of these type of organizations, not just ours, that you can get involved in that provide these type of programs, mm-hmm. insights, networking. That is the way to be successful. Of course, to a certain extent, is being smart and knowing how to use the computer, and depending type of business you are, and doing that type of marketing. But there's a real human component to being in business, and I think that is a huge thing that people dismiss, I think.
Right. So you just mentioned South Asian Chamber of Commerce. I want to know more about your involvement there. What does the organization do? And if there's a young South Asian person that's looking to get involved, how can they be a part of the...
I've been on the board for the past 3 years. In the past 2 years, or this year, including one, I was elected president, or re-elected this year. So that's my involvement there. So I'm involved with kind of everything that we do. But this organization, why I think it's amazing, it's the oldest actually chamber, and it's a mixed chamber. So it's not just Pakistanis, it's all South Asians. So our board's very diverse. So I think in that sense, it's people who come and can network with us to get a wide variety just by the board. But, for the last 30 years, this organization has been putting together workshops, seminars, more, and, in continuing to grow. This year, for example, we started a mentorship program, like a formal one. So we actually take in mentors, mentees, and we also committed to provide scholarships to students this year as well from, all the donations that we get in. So, our organization has been around for a while. We host about 8 to 9 events a year. We have a real estate event, we have a law event, we have a mental health event that I covered, we have a state of the economy that's twice actually done by JP Morgan, sponsors that event. So we have a whole host. We've had AI events. I mean, they change every year, so depending on what is kind of interest. So we have all these workshops that are for little to no cost to attend. If you're a member, then there's usually no cost. But if you're not a member, then there's a small fee just to cover our expenses. But we provide all these tools for entrepreneurs, business people, lawyers, anyone can come.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing all that, Raza. And I've actually been to some of the events, so I can, recommend that to any young person who's looking to be
Thank
a
you.
part of the community. So Raza, you've achieved a lot in your life. How do you stay grounded?
Oh, well, it's easy. I mean, I think you do. I mean, I think it's being humble and knowing that there's still a lot more to do. I mean, I think, I think as being an entrepreneur, once you really get into it, you're never satisfied.
Right.
There's always more, right, to do, more things to conquer. So I think that's what kind of keeps you going. I think being humble is important. I think being conscious about it, because when you become successful, it can go to your head, and I think that ultimately it's not what you want to happen, right? You should do whatever, don't forget where you started and where you're from. I think it's very important.
Yeah, definitely. And, if I ask you, is there, a principle or a quote that, describes how you lead or how you look at leadership? Within your own law firm, you're also involved, as you said, in initiatives outside. So,
so this was something that motivated me throughout a lot of my career. Just from the beginning, from childhood, actually, up until now, whenever I think about things, so I'm a big sports person. So I've been following, obviously Michael Jordan since I was a kid. And one of his quotes is what I really, really say to myself every time. I don't know if you've heard it. It's, I need to remember it now exactly. It's like, never say never, because limits, like fears, are often just an illusion.
That's amazing.
Yes.
So Raza, finally, please let us know, what do the next 5 years look like for Raza Merchant?
The next 5 years, I think, as an entrepreneur, you want to reach to I think every entrepreneur wants to reach to a point where they're able to build a certain type of business that becomes on autopilot, right? I think that's what most entrepreneurs go for. That's why people go for it. Most people are mistaken. They think that when I become entrepreneur, I can have some time for myself. It's actually the opposite, but there are ways to build it. So I think the next 5 years for me is not only professional growth there. I think there's giving back to the community. That's why I'm involved with South Asian Chamber of Commerce. That's why I brought the mentorship and scholarship program here. It's kind of not giving back to the community, giving back to young entrepreneurs, students. So I would say that's my next 5 years, is a mixture of growing the enterprise to where I would want it to be, where my vision is, and at the same time continue to do the civic work that we do.
Thank you, Raza, for taking out the time and for sharing your inspiring story with our audience.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to thank Hum News for giving us this platform, and also to all our sponsors. See you next time with a new episode and a new guest.